Before you call your July garden finished, look at every empty patch of soil one more time. That bare strip beside the tomatoes, that corner where the lettuce gave up, that empty container sitting hot on the patio, all of it may still have enough light, warmth, and time to grow food before summer fades. The secret is not to plant everything you would have planted in spring. The secret is to choose the right seeds, drop them into the soil at the right time of day, and protect them through the first fragile days when July heat can dry them out before they ever get a chance to sprout. If you are standing in your garden in July and thinking, I missed my chance, I want you to slow down for a moment. July is not too late for everything, but it is too late for guessing. This is the month when you have to be honest about your weather, your space, your first frost date, and the kind of seeds you are sowing. Some crops love warm soil. Some sprout quickly and give you a fresh green patch almost before the garden can look tired. Some need patience and steady moisture, and some will only make sense if your season is still long enough. So today we are walking through 15 vegetables you can direct sow in July for a late summer harvest. We are not just naming crops. We're going to talk about why each one is worth considering, how to sow it in hot weather, what mistake can stop it before it starts, and where it fits best in a real home garden. Whether you have a raised bed, a backyard row, a few containers, or only one empty corner, this list can help you turn July from a dead end into a second planting window. But before you scatter any seed into hot July soil, there is one mistake that can ruin almost every crop on this list. The mistake is treating July soil like spring soil. In spring, the ground may stay damp for a long time after a gentle watering. In July, the top half inch can dry out fast, especially in a container, a shallow bed, or a spot with full afternoon sun. A seed does not need much at first, but it does need steady moisture while it wakes up. If it swells with water one day and dries out the next, it may never become the seedling you are waiting for. That is why timing matters. If you can, sow early in the morning or in the cooler part of the evening. Water the soil before you sow so the bed is not bone dry under the seed. After sowing, water gently, not with a hard blast that moves small seeds out of place. For tiny seeds, use a soft spray, a watering can with a fine rose, or a slow, gentle soak. Your goal is not to flood the bed. Your goal is to keep the seed zone evenly moist long enough for the seed to do its first job. The second rule is to read the seed packet like it matters, because in July it does. Look for days to maturity, but remember that number is only a guide. Heat, water, soil, variety, pests, and day length can all change the timeline. If you live in a short season area, count back from your average first frost date. If a crop needs more time than your season can give, choose a faster variety, grow it for baby leaves, or save that seed for another window. Gardeners in the South, parts of California, and other long, warm regions may have more room to experiment. Gardeners in northern states may need to be more selective. The same July seed can be a great idea in one state and a gamble in another. The third rule is to match seed size with sowing care. Large seeds like beans, squash, cucumbers, and okra can usually handle being planted deeper than tiny seeds. Small seeds like carrots, basil, cilantro, arugula, mustard, and bok choy need a lighter touch. If you bury them too deep, they spend too much energy trying to reach the surface. If you leave the surface dry, they may never begin. With small seeds in July, think shallow, gentle, and steady. There is one more principle that makes July sowing feel much easier. Sow small, not desperate. When people feel late, they often panic and pour too many seeds into one space. But a crowded July bed can become harder to water, harder to thin, and easier for pests to hide in. A small, successful row is better than a giant, messy patch that dries out and fails. If you are unsure, sow a test strip. Watch how fast it dries. Watch where the afternoon sun hits. Watch which part of the bed stays moist the longest. That little observation can teach you more than guessing with a whole packet. Containers need an extra warning. A container in July can heat up from every side, not just from the sun above. The potting mix can dry faster than garden soil, and dark containers can become especially warm. If you direct sow in pots, Choose containers with enough depth, make sure drainage is good, and check moisture with your finger instead of trusting the surface color. A pot can look damp on top and still be dry below, or look dry on top while the lower mix is still wet. Seeds need that gentle middle ground. Moist, not flooded, warm, not baked. Succession sowing is also your friend. Instead of planting every radish, arugula, mustard, cilantro, or basil seed on one day, sow a small amount now and another small amount later if your weather allows. This spreads out your risk. If one sowing gets hit by a heat wave, a storm, or pests, you have not lost everything. In July, good gardening is often less about one perfect planting and more about several small chances. Now that you know how to keep seeds alive in July heat, let's start with one of the easiest ways to make an empty summer bed productive again. Bush beans. Bush beans are one of the most useful direct sow crops for July because they do not ask you for a complicated setup. Unlike pole beans, they do not need a tall trellis. They grow in a more compact shape, which makes them friendly for raised beds, small gardens, and larger containers. If you have a space where an early crop came out, bush beans can often step in and use the remaining summer warmth. Warm soil can help bean seeds wake up quickly, but they still need good conditions. Plant them in a sunny spot with loose, well-drained soil. If your soil is dry, water before sowing. Then plant the seeds at the depth recommended on your packet. Give them enough spacing so air can move through the plants once they fill out. Crowded beans may look lush at first, but poor airflow can invite trouble later, especially when humidity is high. The big July mistake with bush beans is sowing them without checking your remaining season. Beans can be quick compared with many crops, but they still need time to grow, flower, and set pods. If your first frost is close, choose the fastest maturing bush bean variety you can find, or consider whether your region still has enough warm days left. In a long season garden, they can be one of the most satisfying crops to direct sow in July. In a short season garden, they may still work, but they deserve a calendar check before you commit the space. Bush beans are also good because they give a tired garden a sense of purpose. A row of bean seedlings can turn an empty patch into a living crop again. And once they are up, they are easier to care for than many delicate seedlings. Keep them watered, mulch lightly once they are established, and avoid letting them dry out during flowering and pod formation. If you want a practical crop that does not need a lot of drama, bush beans belong near the top of your July list. The next crop is the one I would choose if you need fast encouragement. Radish. Radishes are not just vegetables, they are motivation. When a July garden feels empty and slow, radishes can make the soil look alive again. They are simple to direct sow, they fit into small spaces, and they are perfect for gardeners who want to see something happen without waiting forever. Sow radish seeds directly where they will grow. They do best in loose soil without heavy clumps because the root needs room to form. Make a shallow row, sow lightly, cover according to the packet, and water gently. The key is not to dump the whole packet into one tiny strip. If you sow too thickly, the seedlings will compete and you will have to thin them. Thinning is not a punishment, it is how you give the roots enough room to develop. In July, radishes can struggle if they are stressed by dry soil and intense heat. If your summers are very hot, you may get better results by sowing in a spot with morning sun and a little afternoon relief, or by growing them as a small succession instead of one huge planting. Sow a short row, keep it moist, then sow another short row later if your weather allows. This gives you a steadier harvest and reduces the risk of losing everything to one bad heat wave. The mistake to avoid is ignoring moisture. Radishes grow best when they can move steadily, not when they are soaked one day and forgotten for 3. Uneven water can lead to tough, spicy, or poorly formed roots. You do not have to baby them forever, but in the first stage, you do need to keep the seed zone from drying out. If you want one crop that can quickly reward a small empty space, radish is one of the simplest places to begin. Arugula is another excellent July seed when you use it wisely. It is not always about growing a huge mature plant. In hot weather, arugula is often best treated as a baby green. That means you sow it, keep it moving, and harvest young leaves before the plant becomes stressed or too strong in flavor. For people with small gardens, this is a smart way to turn a bare strip into fresh greens. The seeds are small, so do not bury them deeply. Prepare the top of the soil so it is fine and even. Scatter or row sow the seed, cover lightly, and water with a gentle spray. In hot regions, arugula may appreciate a little afternoon shade. That does not mean deep shade. It means relief from the harshest part of the day, especially while the seeds are germinating and the seedlings are small. The mistake with arugula is expecting it to behave in July exactly as it behaves in cool spring weather. Heat can push it to bolt faster. Dryness can make the leaves stronger and more bitter, so the strategy is different. Instead of waiting too long, harvest baby leaves. Sow small amounts, keep the soil evenly moist. If you have a container near the kitchen, arugula can be a useful quick green, especially when you do not want to dedicate a whole bed to it. And here is a good retention lesson for the whole video. Not every July crop has to become a full-size crop. Sometimes the smartest harvest is the young harvest. Baby arugula, baby mustard, baby bok choy, beet greens, turnip greens, and green onion tops can all give value even when the season is tight. This is how smart gardeners think in July. They do not only ask, can I grow it to full maturity? They ask, what useful stage can I harvest before the weather changes? Turnips deserve a place on this list because they offer two possible rewards from one sowing. Greens and roots. If the roots size up, wonderful. If the weather or timing is not perfect, the greens can still be useful. That makes turnips a flexible crop for the late summer transition, especially for gardeners who want something more substantial than a quick leafy green. Direct sow turnip seeds in loose soil. They do not want to fight through hard, compacted ground. Sow lightly, cover shallowly, and keep the soil moist. Once the seedlings are up, thinning matters. It is easy to look at a thick row of tiny turnip seedlings and feel proud because everything came up. But if you leave them crowded, the plants compete, and the roots have no space to form. Thin them early enough so the remaining plants can grow well. The July challenge with turnips is heat stress. In very hot areas, they may do better as the month moves towards slightly cooler late summer conditions, or in a spot that avoids the most brutal afternoon heat. If your weather is still extremely hot, think of them as part of your transition plan rather than a crop you neglect in dry soil. Keep them watered, do not let the bed crust over, and watch for pests that enjoy young brassica leaves. Turnips are smart because they help bridge summer and fall. They remind you that a July garden does not have to be only tomatoes, peppers, and squash. You can start planting toward the next season while summer is still here. If you have a row opening up, turnips can be a good way to make that space productive again without needing transplants. Now let's move to cucumbers. Because cucumbers are where July can become exciting, but also where your calendar really matters. Cucumbers love warmth. In many gardens, they germinate well in warm soil and grow quickly when they have sun, water, and support. If you have a long enough season left, direct sowing cucumbers in July can give you a fresh wave after earlier plants have slowed down. The first step is choosing the right type. If you are growing in a container, look for compact or bush-type cucumbers, or give vining types a trellis. If you are growing in the ground, make sure you have enough space for the variety you choose. Read the days to maturity and compare it with your remaining season. In a long, warm region, you may have plenty of time. In a northern garden, you may need the fastest variety you can find, and even then you should be realistic. Sow cucumber seeds in warm, moist soil. Give them consistent water, especially later when they flower and begin forming fruit. Cucumbers can become bitter or misshapen when the plant is stressed, and water stress is a common cause of disappointment. Mulch after seedlings are established to help keep the soil more even. If you are using a trellis, set it up early, not after the vines are already tangled. The mistake is thinking cucumbers only need heat. They also need time and moisture. July heat can help them start, but if your season ends early or you let them dry out repeatedly, they may not reward you the way you hope. Still, if your garden has the right conditions, cucumbers can bring life back fast. A few vines climbing a support can make a bare corner feel like a productive summer garden again. Zucchini is another warm season crop that can be direct sown in July if your region still has enough growing time. It is vigorous, bold, and fast-looking once it gets going. But zucchini is not a crop for every tiny gap. A young seedling may look innocent, but a healthy zucchini plant can take up real space. Before you sow it, ask yourself where the full-size plant will live. For July sowing, choose a sunny spot with rich, well-drained soil. If you are growing in a container, use a large one, not a small decorative pot that dries out every afternoon. Sow the seeds according to your packet, water well, and keep the soil evenly moist until germination. Once the plant is growing, deep watering is better than shallow teasing. Zucchini has big leaves and can lose moisture quickly in heat. The common mistake is planting zucchini too close to other crops. In July, gardeners often try to fill every empty space, but squash plants need breathing room. Crowding can make watering harder, harvesting harder, and pest problems harder to notice. Give zucchini space, feed the soil well, and keep an eye on the base of the plant as it grows. Zucchini can be rewarding because it changes the look of a garden quickly. Big leaves make a space feel full. But it also demands respect. If you only have a narrow strip between other plants, choose radish, arugula, basil, or green onions instead. If you have a generous sunny corner and enough season left, zucchini can be one of the boldest July direct sow choices. Yellow squash belongs right beside zucchini, but it brings its own kind of visual reward. The bright fruits can make a late summer garden feel abundant and colorful. Like zucchini, yellow squash enjoys warm soil and grows strongly when conditions are right. Also like zucchini, it needs space, water, and enough time before your season turns cold. Direct sow yellow squash in a sunny bed or large container. Choose compact varieties if your space is limited. Prepare the soil with compost or a balanced organic approach before sowing, because squash is not a crop that thrives in poor, exhausted soil. Water gently after planting, then keep the seed zone moist until the seedlings emerge. Once the plants are established, water deeply and consistently. The mistake is underestimating the mature plant. Many gardeners sow squash when the seed is tiny and forget how much room the plant will claim later. If you plant yellow squash too close to beans, cucumbers, carrots, or greens, it may shade them out or make the bed difficult to manage. Plan for the plant it will become, not the seed it is today. Yellow squash is worth considering if your July garden has a sunny opening and you want a crop with strong late summer energy. It is not the safest choice for every climate, but in the right conditions, it can be a powerful second wave crop. Check your seed packet, check your frost date, and choose a variety that matches the time you truly have. Okra is the crop on this list that looks at July heat differently from many cool season vegetables. While lettuce may struggle and cilantro may rush to flower, okra often appreciates warmth. That makes it especially useful for gardeners in hot regions of the United States, including many southern gardens and other areas with long summers. Okra is best direct sown when the soil is warm. Plant it in full sun and well-drained soil. It does not like sitting in soggy ground, but young seedlings still need steady moisture while they establish. Some gardeners soak okra seeds before planting, but follow your packet and your own method. The main idea is to give the seed warmth, moisture, and a sunny place to grow. The July mistake with okra is assuming it works everywhere the same way. If you live in a short season region and July is already late in your calendar, okra may not have enough time to become productive. But if you live where heat stretches deep into late summer or fall, okra can be one of the most sensible crops to sow when other plants are complaining. Once okra starts producing harvest pods, while they are still tender, leaving pods too long can make them tough, and regular picking encourages the plant to keep going. In a July garden, okra can be the crop that turns heat from an enemy into an advantage. It is not for every gardener, but for the right climate, it is one of the most heat-confident seeds on the list. Now we come to carrots, and carrots require a different mindset. They are not difficult because they are complicated. They are difficult because people forget them during the first week. Carrot seeds are small. They are slow compared with radishes. They need shallow sowing, steady moisture, and loose soil. In July, that combination can be challenging, but it is not impossible if you pay attention. Start with the soil. Carrots need a fine, loose seed bed without hard clods, stones, or compacted crust. If the soil is heavy or lumpy, the roots may fork or struggle. Sow the seeds shallowly, cover lightly, and water with a gentle touch. The surface must stay moist while the seeds germinate. This is the part that makes or breaks the planting. Some gardeners place a board, burlap, or light cover over the seeded row to help hold moisture until germination begins, then remove it as soon as seedlings appear. If you use any cover, you must check it often. You are not trying to hide the seeds forever. You are trying to prevent the top layer from drying out before the carrots wake up. In hot weather, that small difference can matter. The biggest mistake is letting the surface dry out and then blaming the seed. Carrots need consistency. If you cannot check the row for several days during hot weather, carrots may not be the best July crop for that moment. But if you can keep the seed bed moist, carrots can be a smart late summer sowing, especially in regions where they will mature into cooler weather. They are a patient gardener's crop, and July carrots reward attention more than impulse. Beets are another crop that gives you two reasons to sow: the roots and the greens. Even if the roots take time, beet greens can be useful when harvested young. This makes beets a good bridge crop for gardeners who want something more flexible than a single-purpose vegetable. Direct sow beet seeds in loose, fertile soil. Keep in mind that what looks like one beet seed is often a cluster, which means more than one seedling may emerge. That is why thinning is important. If you never thin beets, you may end up with crowded plants and small roots. Give the strongest seedlings space so they can develop. In July, moisture matters again. Beets do not appreciate being started in dry, crusty soil. Water before sowing. If the bed is dry, cover according to the packet and keep the row evenly moist. Once the seedlings are up, steady growth is better than stress. Mulch lightly when they are large enough, and avoid letting weeds compete with them early. The mistake is treating beets like a throwaway crop. They may be sturdy, but they still need good soil, thinning, and water. If your season is short, choose varieties that fit your window, or plan to enjoy greens if roots do not fully size up. In a late summer garden, beets earn their space because they offer color, leaves, and roots from one planting. Mustard greens are for gardeners who want fast, leafy growth and are not afraid of flavor. In July, mustard can be a useful crop when grown for baby leaves or young greens. It can fill a gap quickly and give you a harvest without waiting for a full-size head or root. For small gardens, that speed is valuable. Sow mustard seeds shallowly in prepared soil. Because the seeds are small, use a gentle watering method and keep the top layer moist. If your July heat is intense, a little afternoon shade can help reduce stress. You can sow in rows or broadcast a small patch, but avoid sowing too thickly unless you plan to cut baby greens early. Crowding can create weak plants and invite pest issues. The mistake with mustard is letting it become stressed and then being surprised when the flavor becomes too sharp or the plant rushes upward. Heat, dryness, and crowding all push the plant in the wrong direction. Instead, think of mustard as a quick, managed green. Sow a modest amount, keep it moist, harvest young if needed, and sow again later if your season allows. Mustard greens are also useful because they bring momentum. After slower crops like carrots and beets, mustard reminds the viewer that July sowing does not have to be slow. Some crops are there to fill the kitchen quickly. Others are there to develop as the season shifts. A good July garden uses both. Bok choy is a little more sensitive, but it deserves a place because it can be very rewarding when handled carefully. In hot weather, think baby bok choy or young leaves rather than waiting for a huge, perfect plant. Bok choy can become stressed by heat and bolt, so the strategy is to choose the right spot, sow at the right time, and keep the plant moving. Direct sow bok choy shallowly in a prepared bed or container. If your sun is harsh, choose a place with morning sun and some afternoon protection. Sow in the evening if the day has been hot, water gently, and keep the soil consistently moist. Because bok choy is in the brassica family, watch for pests that chew young leaves. Healthy seedlings can disappear quickly if you never check them. The mistake is treating bok choy like okra. Okra may welcome heat. Bok choy needs more care in heat. That does not mean you cannot try it in July. It means you should sow it with a plan. Grow it as a baby crop, protect it from the harshest stress, and do not let it dry out. In regions where late summer begins to cool gradually, bok choy can become a very useful transition crop. Bok choy also adds variety to the harvest. Not every July planting has to be beans and squash. Some can be tender greens for stir fries, soups, and quick meals. If you have a small shaded edge of a bed, a container that gets morning light, or a cooler microclimate, bok choy may be worth a small sowing. Green onions are quiet, but do not underestimate them. They may not create the drama of squash leaves or cucumber vines, but they are useful in almost every kitchen. For small space gardeners, green onions are valuable because they fit where larger crops do not. A narrow border, a long container, a corner near herbs, or a strip between slower crops can all become green onion space. Direct sow green onion seeds in a shallow row. The seeds are small, so keep the soil surface moist and free of crusting. They can be slower to establish than radishes or mustard, so patience is part of the plan. Once they are growing, keep weeds away. Young onion seedlings are thin and easily overwhelmed by competition. The July mistake is expecting instant results. Green onions are not the crop you sow when you need the garden to look full tomorrow. They are the crop you sow because you will keep using them. Even a modest patch can become handy for cutting fresh tops later. In a container garden, they are especially practical because they do not demand much horizontal space. Green onions also help balance the list. Some crops are big and bold, some are quick and leafy. Some are patient and useful. A smart July garden is not just about spectacle. It is about food you will actually harvest and use. Green onions fit that purpose beautifully. Cilantro is one of the trickiest seeds on this July list, and that is exactly why we need to talk about it honestly. Cilantro does not love intense heat. In hot weather, it often bolts quickly, sending up flowers before you get the leafy harvest you imagined. But that does not mean cilantro is always impossible in July. It means you need a strategy. If you direct sow cilantro in July, do it in a cooler pocket if you have one. Morning sun and afternoon shade is better than a blazing hot container against the wall. Sow in small batches rather than one large planting. Keep the soil evenly moist while the seeds germinate. If your region is extremely hot, you may be sowing for a young leaf harvest or preparing for the slightly cooler weeks ahead, not expecting a long, lush spring-style crop. The mistake is sowing a full packet in the hottest spot of the garden and then being disappointed when the plants bolt. Cilantro is not basil. It does not respond to July heat the same way. Treat it as a short window herb. Use shade, moisture, and succession sowing. If it bolts, the flowers can still support beneficial insects and seeds may become coriander. But if your goal is leaves, you need to harvest young and manage expectations. Cilantro teaches one of the most important July lessons. The same month can be generous to one crop and harsh to another. That is why this video is not just a list, it is a matching process. Match the seed to the heat, the space, the moisture, and the time you have left. Basil is a much more heat-friendly herb, and it is one of the most rewarding seeds to direct sow in July. Basil likes warmth. It fits in containers, raised beds, herb corners, and spaces near tomatoes or peppers. It gives you fragrance, fresh leaves, and a feeling that the garden is still alive and useful. Basil seeds are small, so sow them with a light hand. Use warm, moist soil, cover lightly, and water gently. Do not let the top layer dry out while the seeds are germinating. Once the seedlings are established, give them sun, steady moisture, and enough space to branch. When the plants are large enough, pinch or cut the tips to encourage bushier growth instead of one tall, thin stem. The mistake with basil is forgetting that heat-loving does not mean drought-proof. Basil enjoys warmth, but young basil seedlings can still fail if the soil surface dries out again and again. Containers especially need attention because they heat up and dry out faster than in-ground beds. If you grow basil in pots, check them often and water deeply enough to reach the roots, not just the surface. Basil is a beautiful crop to end the list because it gives quick sensory reward. You brush the leaves and smell summer. You cut a few sprigs and use them in the kitchen. You place a pot near the back door, and suddenly the garden feels useful every day. In a July planting plan, basil is not just practical, it is encouraging. Now, after hearing all 15 crops, the most important thing is this: you do not need to plant all 15. In fact, you probably should not. The smartest July garden is not the garden that plants everything. It is the garden that chooses the right seeds for the time, space, and weather it actually has. If you want the fastest feeling of progress, choose radish, arugula, mustard greens, and basil. These can make a bare space look alive again without requiring a huge bed. If you have heat, sun, and a longer season, consider bush beans, cucumbers, zucchini, yellow squash, and okra. These crops can use July warmth, but they need enough days and enough water. If you have loose soil and patience, try carrots, beets, and turnips. These are not always instant, but they can carry your garden toward cooler weather. If you have small spaces or containers, green onions, basil, arugula, and cilantro in small batches can be practical choices. If you have a little afternoon shade, mustard greens, bok choy, cilantro, and arugula may be easier to manage. Think in groups, not just names. A small raised bed might hold bush beans in the back, radishes along the edge, basil in a corner, and a short row of beets where the soil is loose. A patio container setup might use basil, green onions, arugula, and a compact cucumber with a support. A hot southern garden might lean into okra, beans, basil, and squash. A northern garden with a closer frost date might focus on quick greens, radishes, baby harvest, and fast varieties. Here is another way to make the decision simple. If your garden is hot and sunny all day, start with heat-friendly crops first. Bush beans, okra, basil, cucumbers, zucchini, and yellow squash make more sense there than cilantro or bok choy. If your garden has a cooler morning sun area, use that space for arugula, mustard greens, bok choy, cilantro, and maybe radishes. If your soil is deep and loose, do not waste it only on shallow greens. Consider carrots, beets, or turnips. If your soil is shallow, rocky, or in containers, be honest and choose crops that fit that space better. If you feel overwhelmed, use a 3-part July planting plan. Pick one quick crop, one main crop, and one useful herb. A quick crop could be radish, arugula, mustard greens, or baby bok choy. A main crop could be bush beans, cucumbers, zucchini, yellow squash, okra, carrots, beets, or turnips, depending on your season. A useful herb could be basil, cilantro, or green onions. That simple combination gives you speed, substance, and everyday kitchen value without turning your garden into a crowded experiment. And remember that a direct sown July garden does not have to look perfect on day one. It may look like damp soil and labels. It may look like nothing for a few days. That waiting period is where many gardeners lose patience. But under the surface, if the seed has moisture, oxygen, and warmth, it may already be changing. Your job is to keep the conditions steady until the green tips appear. When they do, the emotional reward is bigger than it looks, because every seedling is proof that the season is still moving. Also think about the first 7 days after sowing. This is where many July plantings succeed or fail. On the day you sow, water the bed first if it is dry. Sow at the correct depth, cover gently, water softly. During the next few days, check the top layer of soil. Do not let tiny seeds dry out. If the sun is brutal, use light, temporary shade where appropriate. If a thunderstorm is coming, protect tiny seeds from being washed into piles. Once seedlings appear, remove any cover, give them light, and begin thinning where needed. After the seedlings are established, change your watering style. Early on, you are protecting the seed zone near the surface. Later, you want roots to grow deeper, so water more deeply and less teasingly, depending on your soil and weather. Mulch can help once plants are large enough, but do not bury tiny seedlings under heavy mulch. Keep weeds down because young vegetables should not have to fight for water in July. One practical detail that helps more than people expect is labeling. In spring, you may remember where you sowed everything. In July, when you are filling gaps here and there, it is easy to forget. Put a small label at the end of each row or container with the crop name and sowing date. That date helps you compare the seed packet with real garden progress, and it reminds you when a slow crop like carrots is still within a normal window instead of making you think it failed too soon. If a sowing does fail, do not turn it into a personal defeat. July is a tougher environment than spring for many seeds. Sometimes a storm washes a row away, sometimes birds scratch through the bed, sometimes the surface dries while you are busy. The smart response is to learn quickly. Was the seed too deep, too dry, too crowded, too late, or in the wrong light? Then adjust the next small sowing. This is why small successions are powerful. They give you room to improve while the season is still open. And keep checking your calendar. July planting is local. A gardener in Maine is not making the same choices as a gardener in Texas. A gardener in the mountains is not working with the same season as someone near the Gulf Coast. Your seed packet, your first frost date, your average heat, and your watering routine all matter. The list gives you options. Your garden chooses the winners. If your garden has been feeling tired, do not see that as failure. Gardens naturally shift. Spring crops finish. Lettuce bolts. Peas come out. Containers dry faster. Some summer plants slow down. That does not mean the season is over. It means the garden is asking for a second plan. A July garden can be a patchwork garden. A row of beans here, a few radishes there, basil in a pot, carrots in a carefully prepared strip, mustard greens in a small shaded corner. A compact cucumber climbing where something else finished. You do not have to transform the whole yard in one afternoon. You only need to choose one empty space and give it a job. So when you step outside today, look for the gaps. Look beside the tomatoes. Look at the edge of the raised bed. Look at the container that has been sitting empty. Look at the place where an early crop came out. Then choose 3 to 5 seeds from this list that match your weather and your time. Water the soil. Sow in the cool part of the day. Keep the seed zone moist. Protect the seedlings when they are small. And give your garden a chance to surprise you. Because a July garden is not a failed garden. It is a second chance garden. It is the moment when you stop thinking only about what you missed in spring and start thinking about what can still grow now. The empty spaces are not wasted unless you leave them empty. With the right seeds, the right timing, and a little steady care, those spaces can become green again, and late summer can still bring food from soil you almost gave up on.